conference. Good morning, everyone. It's July 20th, 2023. We are here as a legislative committee of the Forest Health Council. I call this meeting to order. Let's do roll call.
Okay, I'm going to run down the roll. Samantha Albert. Christy Belton.
I'm here. Morning.
Morning. Pat Dorsey. Director Matt McCombs or designee. James. Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally.
Here.
Mark Morgan.
Here.
Julie Stencil. Julie.
Here.
And yes. And Selvin White Skunk. We do have quorum today.
Wonderful. And I want to thank you all for doing 2 meetings in a week and appreciate all of your dedication and work. We have one agenda item today. We have a presentation from Director McCombs or his designee, which will be James Lucero today, about the topic of what are we going to do about the vapor pressure deficit and climate changing conditions on our forests, and then voting whether and taking into action whether or not we will add this to our list. So I'll let James go ahead and present, and I don't know how long you were going to do it. We only have a half hour. I don't know how long you were looking to present. Is it 10, 15 minutes, or do you need a little longer?
It can be really quick.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
And I don't know if there was confusion, but this isn't going to be about vapor pressure deficit or climate change. This was more centered on the discussion after last meeting about what we need to do for seeds and access to making sure that we have more seeding and stuff for reforestation efforts.
No, you're correct. I misspoke, James. I'm sorry.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't talking about the wrong thing.
No, you're correct, and
Perfect.
I apologize. I'm doing too many things at once. So yes, this is about the seed deficit and the capacity and pipeline for reforesting our forests. So thank you for clarifying that. Thank you.
Perfect. Courtney went ahead and sent everybody kind of what came through on our end when we did a search and a request from our partners and everybody at the State Forest Service, the U.S. Forest Service, and such, when we asked, like, what can we do now to make sure that we have some work to do for this council in order to get some of the seed stuff that we were talking about up and going. I know that Courtney sent that, and I am looking for it in my inbox. Courtney, if you have it available, we might. Okay.
Should I share it?
Yes.
Would that be helpful, James?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'd also like to just clarify who's on the phone. Number ending in 48. Did we catch that person?
It's Paige Lewis.
Oh, okay, great. Hi, Paige. Glad you could join us. I will mark you in the attendance.
Thanks.
So while she's pulling that up, we got a lot of really solid information and a lot of direct asks. And if you scroll to the bottom, right here, the raw notes from our partners, potential topics, these are directly what they had sent Matt and I. And so this is just unedited version of their direct requests on what we think this committee should pursue in terms of this kind of idea. Then I sent this information to Courtney and Angela was kind enough to pick out some of those themes that we saw at the very, very top, and she color coordinated them. And so if you go back to the very top, these are the 5 themes that Angela was able to kind of sift through the raw data from. And these are the kind of 5 topics that we think we can pursue should this committee want to take action and actually create some legislation here. And so of those 5 topics, I think it's important to remember and to remind this committee that we need to send our recommendations to the full council, ideally today. So if we do have some final decision items, just reminding the chair here that we want to do that. There is some time for discussion next Thursday, but we want to go ahead and confirm what we agree on today. And so of those 5 themes, the emerging ones are an annual appropriation for the nursery. And this is going towards nursery staff and facilities and equipment. The second one is a study bill where we identify hard numbers for seeding needs in the state, research on how to appropriately plan seed collection for climate change, and evaluate the carbon sequestration benefits of the reforestation projects. The third one is supporting seed collection and reforestation workforce development. We can do that by creating a state seed collection and reforestation corps. The fourth one is create and fund a state grant program to broadly support seed collection and storage, post-fire reforestation and revegetation projects, and implementation and monitoring programs. And the fifth one isn't necessarily a legislative directive that we could actually take in legislation. But much like the other 2 things that we've moved forward on, it's an administrative directive for DNR and the CSFS to work with the U.S. Forest Service to negotiate the ability for NGOs and other state agencies to actually do planting on U.S. Forest Service lands under a shared stewardship agreement, Good Neighbor Authority, and anything like that. And so those are the 5 themes that kind of we were able to discern from. And I'll turn it over to this group to just kind of discuss which ways they wanted to move on that.
Thank you, James. And thank you, Courtney and Angela, for color coding that and bringing us all together. Can we, I was not reading it well, but I probably just really scanned through all that quickly. I was really pleased to see kind of the 5 things put down. So, yeah, some great work in such a short amount of time. So I want to say thank you. I see Mr. Morgan. I'm not sure it was Mr. Morgan had his hand raised, and then was it Paige Paige, I think.
Just a real couple quick thoughts. We're starting from 0 here, and we need to get something moving. Oftentimes, I don't mind studying stuff, but oftentimes studying stuff is a precursor to not getting anything done on the ground for a while. And I think we're so far in the hole and our seed needs are so great that I'm going to focus on things or suggest things where we can get started now. An annual appropriation for the nursery, I think it's appropriate because that's money on the ground now. We can start developing it. I'm okay with a study bill, but I'm less interested in that than I am workforce development to actually get this work done on the ground, fund it, workforce development, get somebody doing the work. And those would be the 2 that I would say. We can always, when I'm in business and I know I'm really behind on something, I start getting something done and build as much capacity as I can, and then we can always decide that we've got enough or we're almost looking at too much and we can put the brakes on. But right now, we're so far in the hole, we have to come up with a jumpstart program, and that's my suggestion. I really like A and C right now, and would move to do those.
Before we make a motion, can we go ahead and have discussion on all of them, and then we can make a motion at the end? I think, was it Paige was next? I'm sorry, you're going to have to help me kind of, I see a hand raised. I think that's Paige.
I think it might be me, Jody, Commissioner Shattuck. This is Pat Dorsey. And I typed in the chat that I'm an ace. So I agree with Mr. Morgan that the annual appropriation for the nursery and the seed collection to get something started seem really important. The administrative directive seems like a no-brainer. I don't know how much support we need from this committee to move that one along, or if we even do. I'm surprised that authority isn't already in. Stewardship and good neighbor authorities, but even be as simple as just a memorandum, right, saying we support this kind of work, blah, blah, blah. So thank you. I'll yield back.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that put anything in the chat or raised their hand or would like to comment?
This is Paige. I can't raise my hand because I'm only on the phone, but I would love to make a couple of comments.
Yes, please do.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, I fully support the need to sort of have a balanced approach, one that combines, you know, the annual appropriation and getting things going quickly. But I also believe that the study is important to make sure that in the long run, what we're doing is focused on the most strategic and important needs. So, and I also support the administrative direction and hope that that's something that could be resolved quickly. So I would hope that we could have kind of a balanced recommendation that thinks about near-term action, but also investing in making sure our long-term strategy is focused on the most important needs.
Thank you. Well, I think these are all phenomenal, and I certainly strongly support adding that to administrative direction. We'll have 3 of them, but I think this one, as everyone says, it seems like a no-brainer, but obviously a very strong recommendation from us, and also hopefully the board's health council supports this. It kind of just gives some emphasis or some backup for getting that done or seeing that done. And then I do like the idea of you know, the appropriation and you know, getting the program to have a program so that we can get folks, you know, the nonprofits or private landowners or whoever, we can get all hands on deck to get out and collect these. So I'm wondering, Courtney and Angela and James, do you think one of those, was it C or what about, is there a way to combine those two to make these 4 recommendations instead of 5, or what are your thoughts on that?
So I'm brand new to this. I don't actually know how administrative directives go. If that was your question, if your question was more so combining these into one, these ideas right now on the screen into one bill, there's always a way to do it. It's just going to have to take a lot of effort to make sure it fits under one title.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting all of them into one bill. I think the administrative direction would be separate. So we need a, and I also think the appropriation for the nursery would be a separate. But I'm thinking the other ones, the study could be separate. But there was the other 2. There's 5, right? Or there's 4? Because I thought there was 2 others that A, C, and E. But I thought maybe 2 of those could be combined.
I'd like to chime in, Jody. This is Courtney, and that the administrative recommendations can be totally separate from our legislative recommendations. They will not count against our 5. So we could have 5 legislative recommendations and 5 administrative recommendations if it came to that. So if you want to vote on the administrative recommendation, I would say consider that separately.
Okay, thank you. I think it's looks like it's Julie and then Mr. Morgan.
Thank you. Yeah. So maybe first a comment on the priorities that were listed, and then a question for whoever. I'm not really sure. I guess when I look at these, the 2 that jump out at me, I don't disagree with the annual appropriation, but C and D seem pretty important to me. I mean, it just goes along with the theme that we worked on this year, that there's work that needs to be done, and how do we get the bodies out there who are trained and can get that work done. And so sort of focusing on that, a question that I had is, would that necessarily need to be its own new type of legislation, or is there some opportunity, and maybe it's a bad idea, because I know once you open Pandora's box, you invite all sorts of problems you're not looking for. Is there an opportunity to build that workforce development in this year's bill, or do with an amendment, or is fresh legislation the better path? I guess I'm curious on your thoughts on that.
Are you talking specifically about letter C in what we did with workforce development last year?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if is the I have to go back and refresh whether the language in the existing bill is broad enough that we could, sort of encourage that some of that workforce be used for this, and maybe not. Maybe it just doesn't work that way. And
I'd
so
have to go in. Sorry,
move
Julie.
it.
I'd have to go in and look again. But
Okay.
based on, and again, I came at a time where you guys already did the work, and I came in at the very end. The workforce development was more so in like the timber industry and after
Right.
the fact. I'd have to go check, but if there's no reason that we can't maybe do some legislative declaration apart from that, then I don't see why not. But I'd have to double check.
Mr. Morgan.
Yes, I'm sorry I did not make myself clear there with my first comments. I believe in addressing Paige as well here that all of these are important. And I was proposing a dual path situation where we can get something going now to try to build some capacity. I don't make light of the other items on that. Also, James, to what you just spoke to, I understood the workforce development efforts from last year are across industry and agencies and all. I think my intent with that was rising tide raises all boats. We have to make sure the agencies have the staffing to get their work done as well. So I guess I would be disappointed if that wasn't taken as a multifaceted bill. So if you go back and check on that and find something different, I'd sure like to know. I think my only concern was oftentimes a study is a precursor to taking no immediate direct action. I'm fine with studies. I want to get a good application. I want to do what we need to do. And so I would just reiterate there that I'm sorry if I misled anybody or was not clear in what I was suggesting. I think they're important. I'm looking for the ones we can jumpstart and get something going.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Christy.
Thank you. I actually would feel a little bit more strongly about that. I agree with Mark wholeheartedly. And because of the sort of sense of urgency that we have right now to make recommendations, I recommend that we just table the study idea for sure right now. I'm not opposed to it, but I think at this late hour, we should focus on the things that will produce results.
Thank you, Christy. Courtney and Angela, how many direct legislative things do we have on the list so far, since the administrative things don't count?
Yeah, so Jody, just also clarify, Angela's not on the call. She's at a conference, but so I can answer these questions for you. This committee has voted on 3 legislative recommendations so far, which means you have 2 more to add to the list to share with the full council. And before we close, in the last 60 seconds, I have a clarifying question for 2 of those past recommendations that we made last week.
Okay, cool.
So, this is Paige. I just wanted to note that the study idea has actually been in consideration for at least the past year. And I would struggle to support moving forward without that piece included. I know I'm not officially part of this committee, but as a member of the council, I feel like that forward-looking piece is really important.
Thank you, Paige, for your input on that. We appreciate it. And it's nice to have some other input from the full council. So that's the reason for my question. Is there a way to combine 2 of those recommendations into one bill? And I'm not sure, but I do think these are really strong ideas, and I think it really matches kind of our discussions from last week that we have an urgency to deal with the seed deficit across, our region, the state, and the whole country, frankly. But we need to, and I know that it's kind of what we want to do alongside with work that with Combs and the Southwest Reforestation Institute, all those folks doing this work, that we have something ready, to go alongside what they're kind of already coming on to. So I know that they're looking at this, and I know they're looking at studies or So I'm not sure, this is really a quandary. So let's talk about, so let's take off the easy low-hanging fruit. I'm looking for a motion to move the recommendation to add this on, one more item for administrative direction. Item number. Are we ready to move the administrative direction onto the list of recommendations?
I was having trouble hearing you there.
That's the same.
Oh, I apologize. I like to go ahead and maybe pull one thing, take care of one thing so we can focus on the others. I'm looking to see if we would support, and anyone would support a motion to move the administrative direction onto our list of with the other two items of administrative direction for the full council to consider.
So I'll move to amend the motion to include the administrative directive along with the options A and C.
So again, we can make it a separate motion just for the administrative. I'm not trying to talk about legislative, just moving the administrative direction item onto the list for another administrative direction. That wouldn't count for the legislative. So then, because that one we can just move on, that we want to have that looked at too, if that's all right. Am I making sense with that? I welcome we can move A and C if you'd like, but I'm wondering about this, if we can just add administrative direction, add that to list now, and then we can talk about the other four.
Committee,
okay?
can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you
Yes.
now. How's that?
Okay, make sure I'm understanding you correctly, Commissioner. She's looking for a motion to just get item E out of the way. The administrative directive, a motion to get that one, since it doesn't count against your legislative items, to add that administrative direction to the other two this committee also wants to recommend. So she's just looking for a motion on letter E.
Yes, thank you.
So I will move that this committee and the Full Forest Health Council move to include the administrative directive in our list of priorities.
Do I have a second?
I would second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Okay, thank you all. Sorry, I really apologize. I thought I would have better service than I-25, but I don't. So let's talk about A through D now. I've heard A and C. I've heard, others talking about, I think I heard a B. So I'm curious, further discussion on where you think we can do two. And that was, again, my question about, is there a way to combine two of those in one bill and then make, so we could get as many of those off the list. So any ideas, discussions, or who would like to, should we take a straw poll? Can we take a straw poll, Courtney? Everyone put in the chat their top two or three. Is that allowed?
Yeah, I believe that's allowed. It would take me a minute to tally things up, but if people want to do that, I can display the results on the screen also. And also James had raised his hand. I think he might have a suggestion for combining, but yeah, if you want to move forward with the vote, I can make that happen.
Thank you, James. Go ahead.
So looking at this, and it would entirely depend on how we write them, I see two different paths forward on maybe combining two of these. I'm hearing loudly from this committee, though, that item B is not going to be a top priority, but I do see the ability to maybe combine B and C, but also the ability to combine C and D.
That's what I'm thinking, is combining C and D and then do A. I haven't heard strong consensus on B, so I would agree with that. Any discussion on that? Is Courtney looking at the numbers we put in the chat? And I can't put in the chat, but I would be I love all of them, but I would A, C, and D, seeing if we can bind C and D together. I don't see any hands raised. Oh, I see someone's on, right? I see someone said, I like this idea. Could someone read that chat for me? Sorry, I don't have my glasses on.
Hi, Jody. Yes, Christy in the chat said she likes the idea of combining C and D and keeping A separate. Jody, I wasn't able to hear your suggestion. Was it the same then, combining C and D and keeping A separate?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I see something else in the chat. Can someone read that for me?
Yes, Julie Stinsel says C and D are her favorites. Combining and keeping A standing alone makes sense. So that's another
Well, maybe
comment
instead
in
of
support
having,
of that idea.
sounds like instead of having Courtney continue to count, I'm starting to hear consensus.
Courtney, will these be brought before the full council? These recommendations?
Yes, they're going to full council to vote on.
Paige, I can clarify that the committee is allowed to bring 5 recommendations forward to the council. So not all of these will show up at the meeting next week, but the 5 legislative recommendations that they agree on will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paige. Okay, so I'm not seeing anybody opposing any of these ideas, and I know Courtney's kind of counting, but since we're almost out of time, if anyone would like to make a motion of moving A and combining C and D together and forwarding those 2 legislative ideas onto our list of 5 for the consideration for the full council. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
I can hear you, Jody.
Okay. And let's make that motion. This
I
morning.
don't know what this group wants to do, but it appears to me the A and C are direct action items. And they're going to fund nursery program and the seed collection and the workforce to do it. And the other 2 are going to be a study bill and creating a fund state program to broadly support seed collection. I don't know what that means. I guess I would look for more detail. It also includes post-fire restoration and revegetation projects. It seems like that's what we're trying to do with the A and C. I guess I'm kind of curious about what the broad. I'd like to think we're broadly supporting seed collection and reforestation. I guess I'm not anti D. I just don't know what does it offer in addition to A and C that we're already talking about.
James, would you like to answer that?
I don't have a good answer for it. I can try. I think basically the difference between A and C and D is just the idea that there's more opportunities for avenues to do reforestation and revegetation. I think A is specifically saying here's an annual appropriation to the nursery, and C is creating the means to actually do the seed collection, whereas D is just another state program with the idea of finding other ways to maybe do reforestation and revegetation work.
I'm totally in favor of that. I just don't know how we could make a difference legislatively right now to do that. I mean, that's what my whole life has been. That's forestry. That's what we do. We pursue all the avenues. Right now, legislatively, we're looking for a way to kickstart this nursery, and we've identified this huge need, and we've identified that we're behind the 8 ball. I'm just looking for a way to get something going. Again, I guess I didn't explain myself earlier. I'm not against any of these others. I don't know how they fit in what we can recommend right now for action. I think that's my concern.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. I understand your concern. So we're, what are your thoughts? A and C? A and five, C and D? Here, I think B is kind of important to us, but not making the top list for the top 10. Am I correct? You may get a thumbs up or a yes or, okay. So who would like to make a motion? Because I think Bruce is there. Let's need more deliberation.
I'm having a real hard time following you, Commissioner. And
I
so
apologize.
I know
Oh my.
that's what I don't want to do is make a mistake here or act on something that I thought I heard or didn't hear. So I'm going to be pretty quiet until.
So here we have two more legislative items to consider, and we have 3 on the table. It sounds like B has fallen off because I don't hear anyone championing B. Did you hear that? Okay.
Okay, I can repeat what Jody said. She's saying she's hearing 3 of these rise to the top. The annual appropriation for the nursery, supporting seed collection, workforce development, and a fund, and D, which is create a fund for a state grant program. She's saying the study bill, she's not hearing broad support in this committee for the study bill. And so she wants to confirm that's how the people on the call are interpreting. I'm seeing some nods and a thumbs up, Jody. So I think you're on the right track there.
Okay. Thank you, Courtney. And I apologize to everyone. Unfortunately, I'm out of town. So this is kind of hard for me today, but I want to make sure we got this in. So I'm looking for someone to make a bill, and we can have further deliberation to make an action, so we can kind of get our other 2 and get these to the full forest council immediately for consideration.
I would so move that we act on then A, C, and D as a combined. Is that what I'm hearing from everybody?
Are you wanting to combine all 3 of those?
I can. They seem to me to be appropriate. They seem to be linked. If they're not, D is a little bit fuzzy for me, but it seems to address A and C. So
how about this, Mr. Morgan? How about a friendly amendment? How about we just vote on A first? As adding to the list.
I'm fine with that.
I'd second a motion to advance A to the list.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, there's on the list. So now we're on to C and D. We want to combine C and D together, and maybe James can help us think about that to add to the list. Can someone read the chat for me?
Yes, the chat is from James, and he was saying something very similar, Jody. He said, do we want to combine C and D and add? So I think, yeah, James seems to be on the same page.
Okay, so I'm looking
I'm
for,
just trying to put it in the chat since they can't hear you, Commissioner.
oh, thank you, and I apologize.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure why I should have hoped over it. I don't understand why. So, so I'm looking for a motion to move C and D together.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Thank you all for your wonderful deliberation and comments today. Thank you again, Courtney, James, and Angela for all the work on this. We'll work on getting that document fine-tuned and then sent to the full council, and then we'll also be copied on all of that. Is that correct, Courtney?
Yes, that's correct. And that'll happen today. And before we leave, Jody, I have one clarifying question.
Yep, let's do that.
Okay, so last session, or at the last meeting, we agreed on a recommendation to appropriate $1.5 million to the Good Neighbor Authority and $1 million specifically for capacity building through Furworm. And I'm wondering if this committee was intending for that to be a one-time appropriation or an ongoing appropriation for both of those recommendations.
That is a great question. What does the committee think? One time or ongoing? Mr. Morgan?
I would feel at this time, I believe that Good Neighbor Authority program is a great thing, and I'm an advocate for it. I would make it ongoing, but on the other hand, I'm a big believer in getting an appropriation and showing results, show what happens with it. And so I would be fine with making it a one-time thing, and let's see the results and see what good we get done with it. The only downside to that is that it makes it hard to hire positions if you have one-year funding and you add capacity to do the work. But I still feel like, as big a fan as I am of Good Neighbor Authority and the program, I'd like to make it 1 year and let's show what can be done with it. I'm real optimistic about the successes that Director McCombs can deliver with that. I've already seen it on the ground. I'm seeing what's happening. Let's let them show us what we can do, and then we can look at funding further, expanding it in the future. That would be my suggestion.
Thanks, Mr. Morgan. Christie?
And I just had a question. If it was ongoing, then are we limited to the $1.5 million per year?
I would bump that question to James. I'm less familiar with how appropriations work.
Well, it depends. I mean, you're not limited to what you can ask for. It's just depending on what this committee wants to move forward. So it can be more than $1.5 million. It can be one time. It can be ongoing. It can be $5 million over 5 years. It's at the direction of whatever this committee wants to go. But if they already voted on 1.5, then I think they'd have to reverse that motion. And this is just now a question on whether it's one time or ongoing.
So let's
Thank you.
stick to that. And I think as we go to stakeholdering, that 1.5 might change. So this isn't, the exact number with the legislative process. So I think the only caution I have is if we go ahead and just do it for one time, then we'll have to recommend running another bill. And that's always more work, but it can be done. So that's the only caution or thought I have. I hope that you all heard that.
I want Director McCombs to be hugely successful with this seed money and ask for a better studied, better program in the future. And it might be significantly larger. Some other things might change this. So I guess Uh,
So I'm hearing 1 year. Is that what I'm hearing? What time?
I'm listening to what you said about having to reappropriate and get another bill. But in this case, we're charting new ground here and we're moving things and we're getting things started. And the public and people want to see results and legislators want to see results. And nothing speaks to the legislators like results. So to me, let's show them our stuff. I would make it 1 year.
Anyone opposed to that? Okay, I'm not sure. Do we need to take a vote to clarify, Courtney, or did you just need us to clarify?
Well, I just wanted to let you know, Jody, that Katie's raised her hand, and
Katie?
oh yes, Katie McGrath Novak has joined the call. Closer to
Sorry,
8:30.
Yeah, sorry, Katie, I didn't see her. Didn't see your hand. What would you like to have some input?
Oh, that's okay. I was just wondering, I don't know as much about GNA. I was wondering if we could do like ongoing for furworm, which I think has some results from the past couple of years that we could show. And then maybe if we think GNA needs to be 1 year, just throwing that out there. I don't know if one could be one and one could be the other. We heard from the collaborative groups that we talked to that things like furworm are really impactful, and it's really hard to make a meaningful program with just 1 year. So I just want to chime in with that.
Thank you, Katie. I think that's a great point. So, but I'm not sure we can do that in one bill, having one be one and one be the other. And so,
Jody, I have these as two separate recommendations on the list, so I think they can have different.
Okay, cool.
Um,
That's all right. I'm not looking at the list. So, so yes, you want to do 1 year for the GNA and ongoing for furworm.
And I do think a formal motion would be best, just for clarity's sake.
Great. Okay, so I'm hearing 1 year.
I'm real nervous.
Go ahead, Mr. Morgan.
I'm real nervous about one thing. I want to move this along just as hard and fast as we can. But sometimes through the legislative body, you can ask for too much. They tend to look at things and say, well, they got this and they got that and they got this. And we're making all these recommendations and improvements. And I think there's a fine line that we're treading there. And I'm just, Good Neighbor Authority has had great success for a long time. And Good Neighbor Authority depends upon the cooperation with the state and the feds. And Colorado was the first Good Neighbor Authority state. The program started here. And it's been used in a lot of other states, but I think there's a long history for both of these of being successful. Your legislature has to be financially responsible, and I worry about asking for too much. I want to make sure we get done what we need. That would be my only concern. I wouldn't have a recommendation one way or the other on whether to make it an annual or an ongoing appropriation, but that does concern me in all of these. We've been asking for a lot. We asked for a lot with the nursery. We got it done. We asked for additional funding the next year. We got it done. We're trying to get them to get some operating money for the seed collection to get that done. I don't want to get this group to get accused of going to the well too often. That's my only concern. Like I say, I would not, and I do not have a recommendation one way or the other.
I think those are great and valid points, Mr. Morgan. And I think these are recommendations. And when we get those to the legislature, they might make some changes. And they might say, hey, this might not go well. We need to only do this at one time. So I think it's okay for us to make recommendations, and then we can see how it goes when we get these to the full council. Full council might want to add or change this as well. So I think if you feel strongly about one thing or anything, these are our recommendations, and the full council will provide some more insight, some more discussion, and then it will get on. So I think that, I know I like to say that if we feel these are important to emphasize the ongoing funding or how important Good Neighbor is, then I think we should recommend that. So, but I agree with you, Mr. Morgan. We want to make sure we're not asking for too much, but also we have to kind of be clear that these are urgent and very important things that are making an impact. And the seed deficit definitely is, a huge urgent need. So those are my comments. So I'm open. I don't hear a consensus here, so I'm open to what you guys would like to do with this, because we just need to clarify this so we can you said this meeting with the this is really important to clarify this for getting this done to be sent to the full council.
You convinced me. You convinced me. So I think you should make it ongoing for both of them then, and let the full council do what they want to do. If that's how you think the process is going to work, you spend a lot more time down there than I do. And so the legislative council will do what they will do with it, and the full council will do, and the legislature will do what they're going to do. So I've never been accused of not being aggressive and going for it. So fine.
Jill, Christy.
So, in my inexperienced mind here, my only concern is I'm a big fan of the Good Neighbor Authority. It works here in my own backyard. I'm concerned that $1.5 million is not enough. And if we make it every year, then are we limiting ourselves to $1.5 million every year?
Great point. And I think, I don't know what that number is, and maybe that's a number that we can just move forward to this recommendation, and then maybe we can forward this when we have this discussion in full council. We can discuss it further and get the full council's. If you want to make a recommendation, make it higher. That's fine. I think that we understand the need. It's probably easier to ask for what we think is really the need and then have it cut back than us trying to, again, it's always going to be a lift to try to get bills passed every year. So if we think we want to go higher, that's fine. But we'd have to resend that motion and re-vote it back in that we write on the list. But we can discuss this and add it at the full council next week to change.
And I'm not suggesting that we adjust that number for this year. I'm just concerned that if we make it ongoing, are we limiting ourselves in the future if there's already a number designated?
Great point. So Furworm is a separate one. Do we feel comfortable asking for that to be ongoing? Assume separately. Let's clarify that one. Let's just do them separately. How about Furworm? Are we comfortable with that ongoing or being separate? Or 1 year, excuse me. Mr. Morgan.
This is a hard one, but I think a year is going to teach us a lot. So I would go with an annual 1 year deal. Because I think, listening to Christy, and I agree with her wholeheartedly, that I think this need is much greater, and I'm not as familiar with Furworm as I am with Good Neighbor, and I know how effective it is, and that Good Neighbor money is the money that allows Director McCombs to leverage federal money to vastly increase the programs that we need to get done here. So I guess you want to stay on furworm right now, I would make it an annual a one-time appropriation, and let's see what happens with it. A recommendation. We're not going to decide this anyway.
Okay. So would you like to make that motion for just the furworm piece?
I'd be happy to. I don't think I'm the right person because I'm not as strong in that program as I am in the other one, but I would be fine with that.
Is there a second for that piece? Ongoing. Christy.
Is it, can you guys remind me where we are right now? And I don't know if you can see the comments in the chat box, but I think they're relevant to this discussion and it makes sense what Katie said. But what is the motion on the table right now?
Well, go ahead, Mr. Morgan.
I believe that I was moving to make it a one-time appropriation for furworm and go forward from there, but I would make it a one-time appropriation.
Okay, I'm going to try to.
I'd be interested in what Katie has to say. She has her hand raised.
Okay, thank you. I'll make close the chat. Katie?
Thank you. I'll just read what I put in the chat. So the groups that depend on grant funding, and for reference, Furworm has a big capacity section specifically for capacity. And the groups that I've talked to say that consistency is the number one thing. Even if it's small and consistent, at least they know that there is a minimum amount that they can plan. Because you've got a lot of groups that get like, you know, a couple $1,000s and they want to hire someone, but like what Mr. Morgan was saying, there's no point in hiring someone if they're not going to be able to have them for more than a year, or they're not going to be able to build a whole forest program, et cetera. And so consistency is, I think, the most important for these groups. So I had recommended maybe we could say, to address Christie's concern, maybe we could say something like, we recommend a minimum of $1 million per year with opportunities to expand as the program succeeds, or something like that, just so that groups who are trying to build programs out of something know, like, okay, I'm not going to have to fire my employee or go and apply for a bunch of small grants if Furworm doesn't get funded next year. So I'm not a voting member, but I did want to throw that in. I've heard a lot of support for Furworm.
So I appreciate the input. I don't know if, from my experience, it's hard in the legislature to put in language for the ability to to increase the amount. They're going to want an amount and be held to that for budget. And so here's the compromise, I think, in the middle for ongoing. How about we, because you're right, I hear a lot of, Mr. Morgan, you said 1 year. How about we make it ask for 5 years of just 5 years for consistency, and then maybe in 5 years they can come back and increase the amount. So at least we know because ongoing in 10 years, 1 million will not probably be enough. And so, or even 3 years or 5 years, at least that gives them that consistency that Katie is sharing. That is an issue, to have that consistency for them to have funding. Then they can build something, and then we can see the results, and then make a really stronger or more informed ask in 3 to 5 years of what that needs to be ongoing. What do you think of that idea? Like say 3 years or 5 years, appropriate of funding this for three or I'm not sure which one it would be, 3 or 5 years.
I would amend my motion to go for 3 years. I think that's a good compromise. I would be fine with that. If they can't get something done in 3 years, then it deserves to die. And if they're doing something, it's going to take legs by then.
I like that idea as well. It gives some consistency, but doesn't, lock us in forever and ever.
Okay, so would you like to restate your motion? And let's be very much, so we need to, I think, resend. Courtney, do we need to rescind that last motion, or just add this to clarify that we want to make this 3? Can we just amend? Can we make a motion to amend? Can you make the motion to amend the already on the list, or do we need to rescind it completely?
I think you can just make a motion to amend the motion made last week.
Oh boy.
So, Mr. Morgan, how about I say it for you and you can say so moved?
I would make a motion to amend the furworm appropriation to be a 3-year $1 million a year appropriation. Does that meet everybody's requirements?
What do you think, Courtney?
I think that works.
I will second.
That meets the requirements.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further
Courtney.
discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? So I was an aye as well. I'm sorry, I was muted myself. So Courtney, I think that's unanimous. So let's move on quickly to the other one, which was Good Neighbor Authority. I agree with the important point. I think that was Mr. Morgan brought that up. Anything that we do there signals to the federal government that we are committed to this, and it's going to leverage and bring in more money. And so it's kind of like a multiplier as well. So I think that was a really good point that you made. One year or no? Do we want to go for 3 years for another compromise? James, you're covering your mouth like that. I'm watching your facial expression. Do you have something you'd like to say about that?
No, I'm not. Sorry if it looks like I'm contemplating something. I'm really not.
Okay. Mr. Morgan.
I think the Good Neighbor program works great. I want to expand it. I don't have any hidden agendas here. I think it does a great job. I'm looking for any avenue to do that. I think we need some wisdom. I think there are people smarter than I am and better at negotiating bills through the legislature. That's my issue. That's my goal. I want to be as supportive of the State Forest Service in this issue as I possibly can. So I'm open to any compromise or recommendation people want to do to achieve that end. I want to be totally transparent. It's a winner. It gets work done.
So we're going to have this discussion in the next full council, and we need to kind of, I'm not trying to rush you all, but these are conversations we can have. So we do this one ongoing because we know all this money is coming down from the federal government, right? There's a lot of money coming down, and this can be a signal that we are committed to getting, this is a long-term commitment. And then as it gets going down through the process and through the queue, this will probably have some more stakeholder input, and then we'll obviously have some really great discussion next week with the full council. What is everyone's thoughts on that?
I'm still stuck on a limit. If it's ongoing, I'm still stuck on the $1.5 million because I'm inexperienced and don't know how difficult it would be to get that number increased. So I'm just stuck.
Some other states on their Good Neighbor policies, Wisconsin and such, they're running and the population and the groups are totally behind them. They're running a $40-50 million a year program through Good Neighbor.
Wow.
And we need to grow that here. And I'm stuck too, Christy. I don't know the mechanics on it. I want an opportunity here to support the State Forest Service, fund this, and see where they can take it. I don't know. Any avenue to get to there, I'm good with.
Courtney.
Yeah, Christy, I'm going to try to speak to your concern, and I'm certainly not an expert too. I'm somewhat new to the state also, but From my understanding, Furworm started as a $1 million grant, and now it's at least $8 million. So it's really common for programs to start off really small and to continue to grow. So I don't think we're necessarily capping ourselves or keeping us limited by setting this original 1.5 appropriation. I think there's lots of potential for it to grow. And in terms of CoSwap, we started off as a pilot program. The intention was prove yourself, and then we can keep adding funding to the program. So I think your concern is valid. And I also do think there's precedent for starting with a small number and building it over time. So I don't think the GNA would be hindered.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Thanks you, Courtney. James?
Thank you.
Also, I think last year in the governor's budget proposal, and it did go through, we were awarded 1.9 million in GNA funds. And so that number isn't too far off. We didn't request that. That was just something that came through in talking with stakeholders. And so maybe starting around there would be a good base point, since that's what we got. And we were able to leverage that with an additional 2 million from the feds. And so just food for thought. That was at least a one-time. So if we're talking about ongoing, that was a one-time appropriation last year.
Thank you for that reminder, James. And you're right, I remember that now. So does that help, Christy?
Yes, it does. Thank you all.
But I think having it ongoing is kind of the strong signal, is that we think this is so important, this has to be done. And I think it's easier to maybe get an amendment to a bill and increase that amount than it is to start a whole new bill. Like if it's a one-time bill, then we have to start all over again from the beginning. But if it's a bill that's ongoing, we can it might be easier to pass an amendment. Does that make sense?
Does to me, and
Yes.
you're the politician, you're the manager here, so that's the
I
route
know.
forward.
I-
That's the
I'm
route
not a
forward.
politician.
That's the route forward that we need to take. I've tried to be totally transparent about where I'm headed.
Yeah,
So
I know. And thanks for bringing that. I'm a public servant, not a politician. I'm just trying to get good policy done so we get
I'm
the work
sorry,
done.
I did not mean to insult you in any way, shape, or form. A politician, a public servant who is a politician, the politician knows how to negotiate the legislator to be a public servant. So
Right. Well, I appreciate the numbers, and I don't think we can get 40 million, but certainly let's get our foot in the door and hold it open, right? And let's see how much of the door how far we can get the door open, and how much money we can get in on the long run. That's what I'm looking at. Let's get this ongoing, and then we can slowly keep opening the door and getting more funding. I think this is just a really strong signal to the feds that we're committed. So that's what I think. So I'm looking for a motion to, I'm hearing consensus of this being ongoing, and we can start with 1.5. I appreciate your concern, Christy. I share it, and I don't think it's enough, but it's at least that first baby step.
somebody else needs to make this motion so that Courtney doesn't have to sort my motions out here. She hasn't got this old dog trained up yet, so.
Christy, would you like to make that motion?
I would love to make that motion. Do you want me to try to restate it, or did you just state it well enough?
You can just say so moved, and that works, if that works for Courtney.
So moved.
I'd second.
Okay. Thank you all for your patience and these have been great conversations. I can't tell you how much I value all of you and your input. You're amazing. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Yay, we're done for now. And James, do you get to vote for Director McCombs? Because I didn't know if you voted or not. Courtney, does he get to vote for Director McCombs too?
Yes, James is officially the designee for Director McCombs. We were discussing if there was any sort of conflict of interest, since the funding will move through the State Forest Service, on him voting for these.
So he's kind of, we can just say he was kind of recused himself from this vote officially, just to kind of cover that.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Courtney. I will be unavailable for the next
6 hours, but I can read stuff when you send it out or whatever after that. So
Sounds great. Thanks
awesome.
all.
Anybody else have anything else to say for the better good? Thank you all for Paige and Katie and everyone else being here. Really important discussions. I think we've got some great lists. What do you think? Everyone feel good? Awesome.
Just want to say thanks for your thanks for chairing this committee.
I apologize today. It's not my best effort. I literally should have went ahead and stayed up at 6 o'clock and not, or actually I should have left at 6 o'clock and not at 7. So I apologize. So, but yeah, you guys are amazing and we're having really great discussions and everyone brings such a great, unique perspective, which helps us kind of really find this really wonderful sweet spot of consensus. And I'm really proud of all of our committee and the work that we're doing. And I look forward to our meeting next week. So thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
adjourned.